the comfortable gray. Unmask the shadows where they play. Welcome to Spooky Things with Debbie. Spooky Things with Debbie.
Music, sir.
Hi, everybody. This is Debbie with Spooky Things. How is everybody doing tonight? I swear, every time I hear that song, I just hear my name being screamed out, and I cannot help but laugh. It's just, Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm looking kind of rough tonight, but I've been through the mill, my friends. Things have been kind of tough on me over here, health-wise. But I'm a tough old bird. It takes more than this to get me down. But it did get me down for the past couple of weeks. I have to say that. But now I had an accident, and it was actually pretty serious. But I'm coming back from it, and like I said, I'm a tough old bird. Anyway, moving on. Tonight, we are going to talk about, and I've been doing these like kind of strange, like off topics a bit because not a lot of people really focus on them. That's what I like focusing on, is like the things that a lot of people don't really talk about. I find them to be fascinating. So anyway, we're going to be talking tonight about the flatwoods monster. This guy is actually pretty cool. Okay. Of course, there's a debate with this guy, just like there's, I guess, a debate with just about anything out there. You're always going to have people who are going, "Oh, that's a bunch of crap." Maybe it is. I don't know. I haven't seen him, so I can't tell you that. But I always kind of try to like to take that, well, it could be, Who am I to say it isn't? But I mean, even I have things that I'm like, no, I'm sorry. I just can't get on board with that. This one right here is like I said, I've never seen him. So I can't give an educated answer to, oh, he does exist, or, oh, he does not exist. I don't know. But I am going to tell you guys so you can make up your own minds of whether you think that it can, it can't, it does, or it doesn't. And that's about as good as we can get. You got to take it over from there. I'm not going to tell you, it's true, he does. The heck do I know? So here we go. Okay. So, and please, if anybody has any questions or you want to get something like clarified, or I'll do my best. You'll see me looking down a lot. This is because I look at my notes. I'm old, people. I can't remember things like that. Anyway, I'm looking at my notes here. And so we're just going to dive right into this, and you tell me what you think, okay? All right. So this is kind of like a comprehensive breakdown. This monster, as they say, monster, they've also got a cute little nickname for him because he's not really cute at all. But I don't think that, I think he'd be insulted to be called cute. But anyway, his nickname is called Braxy. And it's basically, they call him Braxy because he's from Braxton County. This is the area that he basically hangs out at. So let's go ahead. We'll start with the beginning as far as we can tell. Okay. So so we're going to say this is going to be segment 1, and it's the hook and night of the incident. The date was September the 12th. It was 1952. It was right at the height of the 1950s post-World War II UFO craze. And the Cold War, the paranoia that went along with it, everything kind of fed into this particular time of history. And where we're so located at is in the Flatwoods. Flatwoods is a small town in Braxton County in West Virginia. Now, I have a very dear friend that lives up into that area. This place is gorgeous. This absolutely beautiful area. So around 7:15 in the early evening, a group of local boys, it was brothers Edward and friend May, M-A-Y, Edward and friend May, along with a friend Tommy Hyer, H-Y-E-R. They were playing football when they saw a brilliant fiery object streak across the night sky, and it appeared to crash land on a nearby hill that belonged to a farmer by the name of G. Bailey Fisher. So the boys, they see this thing and they're like, oh, you know, we gotta check this out. So they ran to the May home and they were excitedly telling their mother, her name's Kathleen May, and also there was a local 17-year-old National Guardsman there that was named Eugene. They called him Gene. Lemon joined in with them, and along with a few of the other local kids. So they were armed with a single flashlight, and the group of seven kids hiked up the steep hill into the woods to find this meteor. Okay, so that kind of sets the stage for you, okay? So there was an actual face-to-face encounter with this particular creature. As the group reached the crest of the hill, the atmosphere shifted drastically. So first thing was noticed was the smell. There was a very distinctive smell. The air was heavy with a thick, choking mist that smelled intensely of sulfur, rotten eggs, and burning metal. Not a one of those smells good. Can you imagine all three of those together? Oh my God, I'd be so anxious to be up there. It was so acrid, it actually made several members of the group physically ill with nausea and throat irritation for days afterwards. Then they noticed that in the darkness, pulsing red light. Suddenly, to their left, they spotted two glowing eyes. Gene Lemon swung the flashlight beam towards them, revealing a towering entity. Now put yourself into that kind of a situation. How many of us wouldn't be just terrified, absolutely terrified to see something like this? It sounds kind of cool just hearing it, just, you know, but put yourself into that situation. And I don't think it would be quite the fun time as you think it is. So the creature, upon them seeing him, emitted this shrill, terrifying hissing sound and levitated or glided smoothly towards the group. Terrified, Lemon dropped the flashlight. They got to thrown it. And everyone fled down the hill in absolute panic. All right, so anybody knows when a situation gets to a point where everybody's going to run in panic, why do you even go? I mean, seriously. You know, I mean, that kind of doesn't do anybody any good. But if you're going to go and do something, like you're going to go check it out or something like that, and you're going to run in panic, someone's going to get hurt, It's not going to end well. You're not going to get anything of what you were looking for. But, bearing it in mind also, these are just kids. So, but they did. They took off. So, but before they did that, they did get a fairly visual description of him, and they all seem to have agreed with it. And one of the most bizarre physical descriptions that, from any kind of cryptid or UFO lore, and it made it pretty commonly described. He was described as massive, standing anywhere between 10 to 12 foot tall. Now, that being said, I'm sorry, I got to be the one to say, let's break that down. Just got through saying that they were all in a panic state. All of them were freaking out. And it was a quick turn of the flashlight, and it was like, oh, and they were gone. The chances are, in a state like that, you are not going to get the correct size. Everything is always magnetized. Not magnetized, magnified. Sorry. Everything is magnified because your panic is in full mode. So everything to you at that point is bigger than life. If it was big, it was huge. If it was huge, it was freaking enormous. So we need to keep that down on the down low right there. Chances are, maybe it was between 10 and 12 foot. I'm sure it was a little bit smaller than that. But anyway, like I said, I wasn't there. And it said its head possessed a distinctive pointed frame shaped exactly like an ace of spades or a large cowl or hood framing a round blood red face. It scared me. The eyes, set inside the red face, were glowing porthole eyes that emitted a strange greenish orange light. Now picture that. So you got this bright red face with eyes that are shining orange red. Talk about a clash of color. With a pointed head. Okay. The body. It didn't appear purely organic. Witnesses described a dark green or black metallic armored body linked with thick vertical folds or pipes, resembling a pleated skirt from the waist down. Now, I'm still trying to get my thoughts to wrap around that. An armored body lined with thick vertical folds or pipes, resembling a pleated skirt from the waist down. However, you guys figure that one out. Anyway, appendages. Accounts vary wildly here. Some witnesses claim it was completely armless, while others reported seeing small, stubby, claw-like hands extending forward. It did not walk. It silently glided or hovered just above the ground. That would freak me out right there. I've seen things that do that, and oh man, it never ends well, So this is a kind of a creature, for the lack of a better word. I don't really want to call it a monster. So I'll just say creature. I mean, this was like really bizarre, description of it. Okay, so, this is so different from a lot of what other people describe, a lot of the things that are out there. Most people that describe things that are out there, it's more of a physical, biologically physical form. This doesn't only have a physical form, but they're also describing something that could be non-physical that's involved with it. So this is really kind of like a twofold kind of a situation. Is it biological? Is it a hybrid biological? God, there's so many things that could be out there. So I think most of the people that heard the story about the Flatwoods monster, they're kind of bouncing back between the theories of it being an alien, an owl, versus demon. You guys can let me know, what you really think. I have to tell you, because of the studying that I've done, and the education that I have had in certain areas, the demon thing just doesn't work with me. It's possible. I mean, it's very possible. But to see something that they say, oh, it's a demon. Yeah. People who know me know I will be the first one to say that is so extremely rare. Not saying that we see aliens as commonplace. Well, it seems like here lately it seems to be, but I would say it would still beat out the alien end of it. But saying something is demonic just because it looks weird, or it just, I think there's other routes to go with it. Me personally, owl. Now let's say it's only 9 foot tall. A 9 foot tall owl. So I don't know. I'm really on like the wire with this one. It's just too many inconsistencies for me. So anyway, let's go into it, and you guys tell me what you think. So let's talk about the extraterrestrial. If they were leaning on the side of it being an alien, could that description of what they were describing, could it have been something like a spacesuit? Because there is a hypothesis over being that this was an alien life form, and it was donned with some type of a gear, apparel, or a spacesuit. That's what those kind of skirt-like looking thing could have been, And it's because of the fiery object in the sky and the highly mechanical description. UFO researchers like Gray Barker, and this is the man who popularized the case in Fate magazine, argued that this wasn't a biological creature, but an alien wearing a robotic biosuit or atmospheric protection vehicle. The crash was a landing, and the creature was just as startled by the flashlight as the humans were. That I believe. Even Project Blue Book took the case very seriously, enough to investigate the area. This actually sounds like a very feasible description. It's more feasible for me than a lot of the other things that we've just discussed, based on the fact that we have so little knowledge, but yet more than we thought that we had, based on the fact that everything is starting to come to light now. And there have been a lot of things that have been disclosed. So obviously, this whole thing with the aliens, and it's like, it's not just imagination. High government officials are coming out going, yeah, it was that, and there was communication, or there was, experimentation or research done with these particular beings, and it's not just a fairy tale, it's actual fact. So knowing that we know just enough to not know enough, that seems like a more reasonable explanation to me than the others that were given. Again, that's me. Um, and this one is of course, the most skeptical to me, which would be the barn owl explanation. In 2000, a prominent investigator, Joe Nickel, debunked the event using a mix of natural phenomena. The skylight. Remember, they said there was this big, streak going across. A well-documented meteor had crossed Maryland, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia that exact night. So that wasn't a hearsay, or that really occurred. It was very well documented that that meteor did streak across the sky that same night. The monster. A barn owl perched high on a tree limb. In the dark, a startled owl with its talons gripping a branch fits the claw-like hands description. That's true. In its spade-shaped facial disc, it matches the ace of spades head, and the lush summer foliage draping below the branch created the illusion of a towering pleated green skirt. Now, we all know about pareidolia, and it can take on any shape that the mind creates. Literally, it takes whatever shape that it sees and it makes sense out of it based on your experiences, or based on your knowledge of something that you would know something about. It would mean something to you. So your mind is going to automatically try to figure out what that shape is, what it reminds it of, and it would actually create in your mind what your mind thinks that it is. And it can be really scary, what it can come up with. But it's just actually the mind trying to make sense. It's like, make sense of this. That's what it does. It does its best to make sense of what it is looking at. And this is actually a pretty good description. An owl doesn't have to be 9 foot tall. If it's standing up in a tree, and the shadows and the reflections off of the tree or the surrounding area gives it that image of appearing to be something that it's not, it could look a lot better, a lot bigger, as what they're talking about here. Now, the red plate, the red face, and the glow, 3 flashing red aircraft navigation beacons were visible from that same hillside, which likely casts a pulsing red reflection on the owl and the mist. Now, anybody who's been in a mist knows that you can see a light in one direction, and the reflection off of the moisture in the air can actually make it appear like it's in a different direction, because it's reflecting off of those drops of moisture, which are very reflective. So is that possible? Yes, once again, that is a very reasonable explanation for something like this. So we're going into Appalachian folk demonic angle. In local regional folklore, some spin the tale away from sci-fi and towards the paranormal or the demonic. The overwhelming stench of sulfur, which is traditionally linked to the fire and brimstone, and the blood red face led some early accounts to frame it as a malevolent spiritual manifestation, feeding on the anxiety of the town. Now, feeding on the anxiety of the town, I can completely see that. Yes, absolutely. I do believe that. Um, and as scared as they were that night, rightfully so, and as scared as they were, I can see where it could be led to that kind of you know, a summary of what had happened. I can see it, especially with it being young people. They're scared. They're trying to get away. They don't understand what they're looking at. Absolutely. I can see it. So, uh, and we're going to go into like the aftermath, a bit of the aftermath of what, I'm going to run some things by you. If you want to follow in with this, it'd be interesting to hear. Okay, so far the physical evidence of it. The morning after, a local newspaper editor found skid marks and a gummy, oily residue in the field. Skeptics point out that a local team named Max Lockhart had driven his Chevy truck all over the hill the night before, hoping to see the monster. And that was likely leaving the tracks in the grease. It's kind of strange thinking that a above modern UFO would be leaving tracks and grease behind it. No, that's an Earth thing to do. I really don't see an alien spaceship dumping grease on the way out. Pop culture footprint. Braxy is a massive pop culture icon today. It inspired the terrifying alien invaders in Them, in The Legend of Zelda, Majora's Mask. It appears as a cryptid enemy in Fallout 76 and shows up in the anime Dandana. Dandadan. Dandadan. All right, guys, I'm doing the best I can. The town of Flatwoods completely embraces it now. They have a Flatwoods Monster Museum in Sutton, West Virginia, and an annual convention. And the town is famous for its giant painted monster chairs that tourists track down for photos. So they've taken this thing and ran with it. They're like, why not? I don't blame them. Why not? If you can find something that'll suit your town and kind of give it some publicity, why not? So what we're talking about right now is like the basic. This was the first time that they believed that this entity creature had been spotted. So this is the first account of it. There have been other accounts, some not as detailed, and I mean that one was pretty detailed. But let's go into some others that, I mean, sometimes it less detailed to me sometimes makes it more of a realistic thing, because when someone's really scared, details are probably something that don't really happen as well as when you're thinking with a level head and you can really, take a good objective look at something and say, okay, that is definitely what I saw. So let's go into some other ones from different encounters. Now this was like days prior to this one right here. Um, it's not as in your face as the first one, but it's the same period of time. So a few days before the main schoolyard incident, a local woman named Audra Harper was walking through the woods near the tiny town of Heaters in West Virginia. It's just a few miles north of Flatwoods, about the same area. She and her friend saw a brilliant ball of fire, remember that's what the boys said, on a nearby hill. Thinking it was a neighbor out hunting or fox chasing, she kept walking, and when she looked back, the fire was gone. In its exact spot stood a towering, dark, man-shaped silhouette. Terrified, I can understand why, the two women fled through the rocky terrain. That would be terrifying to me, especially being out in the middle of nowhere. So that is very easy for me to believe. That really is. I mean, because that could have been any one or a number of things. So, and they also said that there was an actual flight path that they could observe and track. This object was actually tracked across the sky long before it hit Braxton County. So this wasn't something that was just strictly had occurred in Braxton County. People saw it coming miles before it ever hit there. Around 6:30 p.m., which is roughly about 45 minutes before the Flatwoods crash, a crowd of about 20 people sitting outside the Green Lantern Tavern in Drury's Run, Pennsylvania. I hope I got that right. I'm not real good with names, but anyway, Drury's. It watched a silver, star-bright object the size of a pie pan silently streaking across the sky, heading southwest. The exact vector point towards the Flatwoods, the way that it was pointing was, it was like it was going into that direction. Now, when they talk about a pie, it's thundering out there, guys. When they talk about a pie pan, if it's a pie pan that you're looking at in the sky, obviously it's just going to be a lot bigger up close. But when they're saying the size of a pie pan, it's just their view of it, the size that it was in the sky with them viewing it. So they're actually not talking about a pie pan shaped thing that was zipping around, but from their point of view, that's about the size of it. And going on, there was another sighting. It's called the Terror on Route 4. The Snitowski sighting. And this was on September the 13th of 1952. And this is probably, this was the night after the incident. And this is a pretty good one here. George and Edith Snitowski were driving down deserted Route 4 through Strange Creek, which is about 20 miles south of the Flatwoods, with their 18-month-old baby. Oh. The car's engine suddenly died and the headlights went black. And you hear about that a lot when an alien ship is near. It's like it pulls energy and it shuts things down while it's in that area. And this would fit into that. Moments later, a horrific, foul, sulfurous odor filled the vehicle, waking and causing the baby to start to scream. A blinding, strange light filled the darkness outside. Hovering directly in front of their dead car was a 10-foot tall creature fitting the exact description of the Flatwoods monster, with one massive difference. It wasn't wearing its spade-shaped hood. Instead, the couple reported its head as bony and reptilian. That would scare the crap out of me. I got to tell you, that would do it for me. The creature floated right up to the vehicle and slowly dragged a long lizard-like hand across the hood of the car before drifting away into the dense tree line. As soon as it vanished, the car roared back to life, and George slammed on the gas. He later published this account in Mail magazine in 1955. Okay. That, believe it or not, I can find, like I said, a lot of times when it's not as detailed and it's more rough in the rough, that to me puts more logic to it. And of course, they're saying it could have been up to 10 foot tall. That's considerably smaller than 12 foot tall. So that right there is a more reasonable size. It's huge, but it's still a more reasonable size. Same smell. However, there was no communication between the night before and the night after people. They didn't know about that. And I don't know. It just kind of seems like it fits, and I can just completely, the way that they're talking about it, to me, it's much, much more believable. So obviously there's something to it. So here we go into the let's see what they found out with some of let's see what they found out with some of the things that they had discovered with the research that they had done, the studies and the investigations that they had done with this thing. So this is, let me see. Let me go up a little bit. Okay. So let's go ahead into some of the details that they found on the investigation that had led up to, which makes this really something that is not beyond imagination here. Remember, things are discovered all the time, and with the opening up the alien encounters from the years past, there's a lot of things that are coming out right now, and a lot of this right here really does fit a lot of those descriptions. So, it does. This is where I really begin to think, wow, I don't know, this could have something to do with it, because we just don't know that much about it. The physical sickness, what they call it, monster oil. The morning after the main encounter, local newspaper editor A. Lee Stewart Jr. went up the hill, and he noticed a lingering heavy metallic smell and found two parallel skid marks in the mud alongside the thick, gummy, black, oily residue. And we were just talking about that, but they said that one boy had brought his truck up there, and that could have been where that particular sighting had come from. So that could be explained. The chemical element The kids and Kathleen May suffered from violent vomiting, severe nausea, and swollen raw throats for days. While skeptics call it mass hysteria, UFO researchers at the time pointed out that the symptoms perfectly mirrored acute exposure to mustard gas or localized chemical poisoning. So, what they were experiencing was something actual that the local investigators actually had common knowledge of. And it was nothing out of the norm for situations of being around elements, such something similar as that. The boys brought a dog with them also up the hill. And according to the local oral histories, the dog trotted on ahead like they do. They're going to lead the way. Caught the scent of the sulfur mix and began howling in pure terror. Ed turned around and ran back to the house, shaking, and was reportedly sick and comatose for days afterwards. Sounds like the dog had the right idea. Hightail it out of there. And this is what they call the National Guard factor. Eugene Lemon wasn't just a random teenager. He was a 17-year-old enlistee in the West Virginia National Guard. They enlisted them very early back in those days. Having a military adjacent figure panic, drop the flashlight, and sprint down the hill added massive credibility to the story for the locals who knew him. So evidently he was known to be pretty stable. You know, it took a lot to get this guy to really react to something. And when he reacted in that way, it really had people thinking, wow, if he would react like that, it's got to be something to it. So again, it goes back to, you know, what your not only in what your belief system is, but how much you rely on the people that are doing the investigations on this. How well do you find their credibility in it? You know, somebody who's been known to lie, you're not going to believe a whole lot of what they say. But others that have never had that stigma attached to them, then they're going to hold a higher place in that. It's going to be like, man, we've never known him to lie. So, and I do know that that would probably be, you know, in the same way. If it's an experienced investigator, and I know that they've been instrumental in really, you know, doing a lot of good research and information into something, if they say something, I'm going to listen. I'm going to definitely take a deep thought into what I'm being told, even if I don't quite believe it myself or can really relate to it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It means that, okay, so I'm going to learn something new that day, and I'm going to listen to what they have to say. Okay. And the Ace of Spades hood and the pleated metallic dress also matched up with the other witnesses' testimonies. So you're getting a lot of the same information from people who really never spoke to one another at all before giving testimony to it. And it's just another example of people who never get to communicate. They're all relating the same story. This is the same description, the same way that it happened, the same way they look. Everything is the same, although they've not been together to exchange their stories. It just all fits in. So specifically, the 1950s UFO boom, the owl-like features, or the bizarre mechanical movements, these were all indicative of that period of time. There was this huge UFO, you know, controversy going on at the time. Did it happen? Didn't it happen? You know, Are they reptilian? Are they humanoid? What are they supposed to do? Are they friendly? Are they not friendly? This huge UFO boom is going on at the time. Project Blue Book, Area 51. I mean, it's loaded. The era is loaded with this UFO stuff. So this was prime time for something like this to have occurred. Now there are similar situations, and some of you might have heard of these similar situations. And this one's called the Owlman of Manan. The Owlman of Manan. It's like a visual twin. If you lean into the barn owl theory for flatwoods, the Owlman is the absolute perfect sister story. First sighted in 1976, much later, in Cornwall, England, this creature was spotted hovering over a church tower by two young girls. And it's just basically, it's got like a barn owl top part of his body with the big long wings, but he's also got arms that come out and a very long, muscular torso and body, his legs. This is described as a human-sized bipedal bird walking on two legs with glowing red eyes, large claws, and a massive wingspan. Just like flatwoods, the entity makes a loud mechanical hissing sound and leaves a small smell of sulfur in the air. So could it be the same animal? Sure, it could. Again, judging by the fright that a lot of people have taken, a lot of times it's not exactly accurate. It's close, but it's not really accurate. And when you put it up side by side, you're going to have small discrepancies. Even if it was the same animal, going to have small discrepancies. Then there's the Kelly Hopkins goblins, the 1950s cosmic counterpart. So this has taken place 3 years after August of 1955. This is after Flatwoods was first spotted. And this is in the Hopkinsville Goblins incident, is the other foundation alien siege story from the mid-century UFO craze. A farmhouse in Kentucky was allegedly besieged by small metallic humanoids after a bright object crashed in the woods. And it's interesting because the body looks fairly human, the two arms, the two legs, the chest, a big head with like batwing kind of ears up there, and big eyes. So while these creatures were much smaller, around 3 foot tall, they shared the same metallic appearance, glowing eyes, and floating or gliding movement without their legs ever moving. That's just freaky to me. They also seem completely impervious to gunfire, adding to the mechanical robotic theory that links directly to the biosuit explanations of Flatwood. So, I mean, one would think that the sound of a gun is so loud and so piercing, it's going to make someone jump. Even if you knew it was going to make the sound, just the sound alone, it's going to make you naturally jump. They didn't do any of that. And when they say that they were much smaller, to me, that would make sense because there's a very good possibility, again, in their haste to get away, they didn't notice that the thing was up on a hill. If it was up on a hill, he would look a whole lot taller than he was looking, than he was at the time. So it could have been something like the smaller creatures, because everything about them was the same, except the fact they weren't that tall. And that just simply could have just been misidentification. And of course, we're going on to the Point Pleasant Mothman, the West Virginia legacy. And we all know about the Mothman. So you can't really even talk about something like this without mentioning the Mothman, which was first sighted in 1966. So it was about 10 years after everything that was going on. It shares the same home state and shared the same MO about, terrorizing the local folk. Both of the entities are towering silhouettes. Mothman is roughly 7 foot tall with giant glowing eyes that cause immense psychological dread and physical sickness. I saw the documentary on Small Town Monsters about the Flatwoods monster. Yes, there you go, Mercedes. How are you anyway? Yeah, it's fascinating, Mercedes, to read into that. And everybody's going to have a different take on it. You and I could sit down and talk about it, and we would both get two completely different. Hi, Todd. Get completely different ideas from it, but they could both be correct. It just depends on what way that you're looking at it. And physical sickness to those who look directly at them, like Braxy. I like that name. Mothman's flight or glide is completely silent. That's kind of weird. And it's heavily linked to an anomalous, I'm slaughtering it, anomalous aerial lights and UFO sightings in the region. So, I mean, it definitely has different ways of locomotion, and it's not understood. And so many of these things that we don't understand, you come to your own conclusions about them, whether they be right or whether they be wrong. It doesn't matter. It's you trying to make sense. It's like, make it make sense. And that's what your mind does. It's making it make sense. So the last one I want to talk to you about is the Fresno night crawlers. These are fascinating. The bizarre moving legs. Remember, it's like they got from like the torso down, and they're just kind of cruising around just from the torso down. These entities are essentially just a pair of long white legs connected directly to a small dome-shaped head with no arms or upper torso to speak of. They share that same eerie, unnatural, completely non-human locomotion pattern that defies standard biology. So there you go. There's some strange things out there, folks. Strange things going on out there. So Flatwoods turned Braxy into a quirky, welcoming folk mascot with a giant lawn chairs out in the front, while Point Pleasant leaned heavily into the dark, ominous, cosmic horror vibe of the Mothman. People react to different, to things differently. Some of them try to make an adventure out of them. Some make a big point of fear-based phobia. It just depends on the local people and how they interpret what is going on. So, and there's also the Project Blue Book. How are they involved in it? And what's the deep dive comparison on the Project Blue Book handled the Flatwoods versus Hopkinsville cases? What did they come up with? How did they interpret the whole thing? Project Blue Book did not send a massive task force to Braxton County. Instead, they dispatched a single investigator to look into the fiery object that sparked up the whole event. The Air Force's primary interest was tracking the aerial trajectory of the object to rule out Soviet aircraft, missiles, or top secret domestic hardware. Once they confirmed the object was a high altitude celestial event, well, they largely ignored the monster report, viewing the creature sighting as a byproduct of localized panic. And to be fair, I kind of said that myself in the very beginning. You know, when people panic, people aren't going to take you as seriously as if you hold it together and get those key things that you need to pick up on to make it a more believable report versus a frantic, oh, it scared me kind of a thing. So here's just kind of like the conclusion on this whole thing. The Air Force states that a well-documented meteor passed over Maryland, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia at approximately 7:15 that evening. They concluded that the monster was a large owl perched in a tree. The heightened state of fear and anxiety of the witnesses, paired with the sweeping beam of a single flashlight through the dark woods and thick ground for fog, disoriented a normal bird into a 10-foot tall extraterrestrial. Possible. Despite the massive scale of this event, which involved nearly a dozen witnesses, a 4-hour gun battle, and the local police, state troopers, and military police from nearby Fort Campbell rushed to the scene, Project Blue Book never officially investigated the Kelly Hopkinsville case. The initial response from military police on the night of the incident was purely to assist local law enforcement with what looked like a dangerous, chaotic gunfight. Once it was clear no domestic or foreign military threat was present, the Air Force baseline staff declined to open a formal field investigation. So they're just passing it off like, okay, y'all crazy out here, messing around with guns, creating havoc. We don't need to be a part of this. So the official conclusion is that because no formal investigation was launched, Blue Book had to log the case with minimal paperwork. In the Master Project Blue Book files, the Kelly Hopkinsville encounters is officially stamped and dismissed as a hoax. The Air Force largely based this on the fact that when the investigators and police returned to the farmhouse the morning after, they found zero physical evidence of an extraterrestrial landing, no strange footprints, no blood trails from the creatures that were shot at point-blank range, and no radiation. They chalked the entire multi-hour panic up to the effects of excitement, public hysteria, and the over-embellishment of traveling carnival workers who were visiting the family at the time. Later, independent UFOologists, including Dr. J. Allen Hynek, who was the civil scientific advisor to Project Blue Book, would note that the goblins heavily matched the aggressive nesting behavior, size, and glowing eyes of the great horned owls, which are native to the Kentucky woods and fiercely defend their territory at night. So it didn't look good for them. It just did not look good for them. Basically, Project Blue Book, which part of their job was to squash everything, put it down as being a hoax, whether it was real, whether it was not. Project Blue Book will come out and put a stop to it. They use a lot of information for their own use, but when it came to public declarations, they squash it, irregardless of what it is. It's squashed. So it basically, Blue Book's position was they're not there to explain phenomenon or try to give reasons why it happened. Their main job, their absolutely main job, is to squash it and protect protect the secrecy of what was going on. So, anything that Project Blue Book would be involved with, national security came above and beyond anything else. And that was their job. Shut it down for national security. So this is what we're basically dealing with in situations like this. Do some research on it yourself. It's absolutely fascinating. Is there something behind it? Sure. I definitely think that there's something behind it. Me personally, I'm tending to go on the fact that I do think that it could be something extraterrestrial. And I think it's something that Project Blue Book is familiar with. I definitely do think that the powers to be that do the investigations on this are very much aware of what it is, very much aware of what its plan is, what its actions are. Oh, of course, I do. Are we ever going to know? Probably not, because that's what they do. They shut it down. So we'll see how it goes with all these disclosures coming out. And remember the names of this, the Flatwoods Monster. Be nice to know if any of it gets, recorded from here on out. So, my good people, this is what we've talked about tonight. And, do some research on it. I'd love to hear from you guys about it later on. And everybody have a good night. Before I sign off, I want to remind everybody of the Deep South Paracomic-Con that's coming up real quick here. It's, as of tomorrow, will be next month in August the 8th and the 9th in Enterprise, Alabama. We are having an amazing group of people that are going to be there. Jeremy Leonard, Letriana Terry Brown, Robert Mukes. Oh my gosh, Keith Age, Ken Gerhardt. Oh my gosh, it's amazing. I got to keep a list of all these people here because the list is just James Stokes. Who could forget James Stokes? I mean, it is just absolutely unbelievable the amount of people that are going to be there. And you just don't want to miss this. Getting this type of a group of people in one building for such a short period of time to where people can walk right up and be able to converse with them on a one-to-one basis. How many times you get to do that? And there's going to be seminars. There's going to be cosplay, game playing. It's just amazing, all the kind of things, not to mention the vendors that are going to be out there with all kinds of cool things. Michael and Destiny Fox from Fox Paranormal. I'm going to be there. Me with Spooky Things. We're going to be there. Would love to meet you guys. So many things going on. So everybody, August the 8th and the 9th, Enterprise, the Civic Center, Alabama. Hope to see you there. And we'll be talking to you guys soon. Take care, everybody. And let me know what you think about this. Bye-bye.
Good night from Spooky Things with Debbie!